Hey, what's up? This is Patrick, and welcome to the Oakland Warriors podcast. It's been a minute since I've done this with another person, and I have with me my friend Vu-Bang Nguyen. What's up, Vu-Bang? How's it going?
What's up, Patrick?
So you're a diehard, longtime Warriors fan, much like myself, correct?
Do I need to claim my Oakland Warriors heritage in order to move into this space? Yeah, so I started being a Warriors fan through my uncle, who has since passed away. He passed away actually a few months before the 2015 championship, so it was a bittersweet championship. Like halfway through that championship run, I sort of knew that we were going to do it just because of his passing. I just had this feeling. Um, but yeah, I essentially started as a fan because it was a very cheap event to go to that he would take me to. So, I was less than 10 years old. He would just push me in my car and we'd drive up to Oakland. Growing up, you would go to Giants games for school. You would talk about the Niners all the time. But it took it was a big deal for anybody to go up to Oakland and go to a Warriors game. And so we did the whole thing. I mean, drove out, parked at the Coliseum parking lot, walked over the bridge, did everything back in the day. It was like $4 to $8. I want to say it's $4 to $8 a ticket for Upper Bowl back then. Yeah, and just fell in love with it. So,
And who was on the squad when you started going? I don't mean to age you on this one. I'm just
my earliest memory is watching Rod Higgins. This whole debate about him when he had like a wrist, like some sort of cast on his wrist. I that's the earliest memory I have. I don't even know what year that was. I just knew that it was just a fast team to watch. And the craziest thing is I knew who Jordan was. I was a Lakers fan also because I love Magic Johnson. But always loved the Warriors, but hated Jordan. So it was a very weird time in my life. I watched, I know I'm going off on a whole tangent here about The Last Dance, but at first I realized I did not want to watch The Last Dance. I'm like, fuck Jordan, And then I was like, I never grew up watching Jordan. And then I watched all of Last Dance, totally fell in love with the whole team again. And I realized I watched every single one of those games. I just don't remember it because I was just so young. It felt like a different sport. And I'm sure you can relate to this because we're going to be talking about what it's like to be a Warriors fan this year. But like watching Jordan, Magic, everybody playing in the playoffs, it felt like a different sport. Like basketball in June, it was just like being a Warriors fan was basically looking at clippings of who was going to be in the draft. In the middle before the draft, and it was about free agency. And it was about the cap. It wasn't about playoffs. Like it just was. It felt like a different sport entirely.
exactly. I think longtime Warriors fans would say that like the lottery and the draft, that's our playoffs because that's when you have hope, and all you ever want as a sports fan is hope. Because that's how you can delude yourself into your team being any good like the next season.
And it was fun. I mean, I remember one year getting really excited to get whatever video game was out because I knew the lineup would be Chris Mullin and Spreewell and Chris Webber, like this crazy team that was only existed on paper right before Spreewell choked.
PJ, yeah.
I remember getting PJ Carlos. I mean, I remember buying the game. I'm like, this is the best Warriors team on paper, and they never actually played a game. And it still feels good thinking about that team, even though they never played, because basketball was just conceptual in your head. It was never actual playoffs on TV.
I mean, call me a homer, but there was that team that never existed. This is a what if that I talk about with my friends all the time. Is the team that if Hardaway didn't tear his ACL and you have a lineup, I think of like Hardaway, Billy O, Spreewell, Weber, and Mullen, right? Like that was the ideal small ball Nelly team. And those guys would have scored a ton of points. And I personally think that if that team in 93, 94, 94, 95 still existed intact, I know Hardaway got traded, he was injured, everything fell apart. That team would have been probably top 3 in the West. I believe that. I don't remember who else was in the West besides Houston and Phoenix at that point, but if you go back, if you can find, I found a while ago a YouTube clip of that team with Avery Johnson instead of Hardaway, of course, and those guys were fast and athletic and mean, and they had attitude that I would have loved to have seen that team in the playoffs, like go up against uh, the Rockets. I'm not saying that they would have won against the team, but when Jordan was playing baseball, it was fair game, man. Like anyone could have gone for it at that point.
I swear we'll get back on topic, but are we sure Billy Owens was good? Because I don't remember. I mean, my recollection of him growing up is that his value was only the fact that he was not Mitch Richmond. So I know you mentioned him, and I have a bunch of basketball cards to prove it. But was he that good?
Trust me, I would have kept Richmond instead, but I'm just saying constituted that team was built to run, and uh, Billy Owens was not good. He was a huge disappointment, but he was Chris Webber's friend. They basically had a bunch of guys who could dribble and shoot early on, right? And sometimes I get muddled with who was on the squad at what point, but regardless, like that team with Weber and Spreewell and Hardaway and Mullen, at the very least, if that team ever existed, that would have been pretty nasty, I think.
I had a '92 Dream Team cartoon shirt in extra large that I kept in mint condition for all these years. And like 5 years ago, I just gave it to a friend, and then I was like, I immediately regretted it. I should have framed it, but if I still had it, I would have framed it.
Do you think? Here's my segue. Do you think you would frame the new Steph Curry brand logo?
Here's my thing about the Steph Curry brand and Under Armour is I want to support him. I really do. The company's terrible. I mean, the CEO of Under Armour is a Trump supporter, so totally not bought into all of it. I mean, one of the reasons I think he got this deal is because he essentially pushed back on the whole ass thing. Remember that? So the CEO of Under Armour said that Trump was an asset to the country, and then Steph said, if you take out the et part, it's basically implying that he was just an ass. And so they went back and talked, and I think that's when they came up with the Curry brand deal that's equivalent to Jordan. But yeah, in short, if you have to do like a 2-minute video to explain what exactly the logo means, then you totally fucked up on the logo.
Yeah, that logo looks just like a scribble, unfortunately, and it's a bummer. I think that that story of Steph with Del Curry going into the Nike offices and them calling him Stefan or Steven or something like that, and not even knowing who he really was. So he was soured on them right away. It sucks because Nike really, really, really does great stuff overall with like their advertising campaigns, their commercials, their designs, and their stuff just looks cool and it sells. Whereas like Under Armour, I feel like when Steph had his first couple shoes, people were like, cool, Steph was like the everyman, right? He was like the 6'3" guy that everybody went to like high school with or something. And but subsequently his personal brand just kind of feels like maybe not as cool or hip. And plus a lot of his shoes, like remember he came out with a shoe that everybody made fun of, looked like an orthopedic shoe or something.
Are we sure he would have been great on Nike anyway? Because we're talking about the non-Jordan Nike deals, which is KD, Kyrie, LeBron, PG, Westbrook, CP3. Like, if you took a look at all their logos and think about all their shoes, I personally only like maybe 2 or 3 of all their shoes combined, which is like the KD 10 and the first Kyrie shoe, and everything else just seems like a hot mess. Just like zippers and like buttons and like multicolors and Mamba edition this and Mamba edition that. It's just, I don't know. I don't know if it would have been any better on
a
Nike.
good point. Like, I'll be honest, I'm not a sneakerhead to the extent that I will like know what shoes look like what or what edition and stuff. But I just think the overall kind of vibe around him and his shoe, and it would be maybe, I would have liked to have seen what they could have done. I think Kyrie, those are some shoes that I've seen before. I don't know which edition, maybe the ones that you're talking about, but I was like, oh, those are cool. He had like the coolest looking shoe out of the non-Jordan one. So Yeah, no, I totally
Yes.
get that, but would he have gotten like his
I
own brand with Nike? Probably not. You don't do that if
No,
KD doesn't have
no.
that.
I actually really liked it when he moved out of Nike because I visited Nike. Actually, I visited Nike a week after I visited the Nike campus in Beaverton a week after Steph was there to get his feet scanned to make the latest shoe or something. And so I was like, wow, they're really, really trying to do this. And then after that, he left to go to um, Under Armour. And part of what I was reading about was, Nike's number one goal is to sell shoes. And so they're not going to give him a really high, a big high top that'll protect his ankles. And that's all I was concerned about back then. Is the number one priority to make a shoe that actually will keep him from getting injured, or is it to sell shoes? And so I was happy that they moved away. And who cares if it was an ugly shoe? It would have been a high top that would have protected his ankles. But I was happy about it at the time. But now those orthopedic ankle supports he wears just fit um, like inside the shoe, so I guess it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but I mean, getting back to the whole logo thing, I mean, the fact that it's like a hand holding up a 3 point symbol or whatever. I don't know. I just think it's kind of corny, you know what I mean? And it looks so
Oh, you mean the white power symbol? You mean?
yeah, the white power. I mean, what are the odds? I put it 50-50 that that'll get adapted, co-opted by white supremacists once they realize what it
It,
is. If the Curry brand takes off,
it makes me appreciate the old logo, which I just realized a few days ago is also it's SC, but it also spells out 30. Like, oh, that's pretty cool. I didn't even notice that from far away, but makes me appreciate it
So
more.
did you think it was an SC or did you think it was a 30 the whole time?
I thought it was an SC the whole time. I didn't know it spelled out 30.
I think that logo's cool. For when they first came out with that, I was like, oh, okay. Under Armour had some decent designers, but I guess they all left and went to Nike.
But we both agree that the logo should be a silhouette of him shooting a three.
Yes, yes. I mean, yes, exactly. There's only a handful of logos which are the actual player, and he deserves it simply because of the iconic nature of what he does. I mean, who else right now would have something like that? I mean, maybe James Harden like grabbing somebody's arm. Like that should be his logo with someone else's arm stuck in there.
Oh yeah, Harden should be an animated logo. He just falls immediately after that happens too.
Are you a Under Armour enthusiast?
I try so hard. Like, so I'm wearing a hat right now, which I got at a Curry pop up during his birthday. So they popped up the Under Armour popped up a store in downtown Oakland where they sold all Curry stuff for a month. And so I came in and I bought an Oakland hat. It says 10 for the 10 years that he spent in Oakland, and it's got the Oakland tree on it. It says SC, and I mean I love the hat, but it was literally the only thing I liked in the store. At the time they released his new shoe, which was like the birthday edition, and it was literally the colors of a birthday cake. And I was like, what? Why are you getting inspiration from this? Like, this is not how you should get inspiration. A shoe shouldn't be like neon orange, neon blue, and the color of a birthday cake.
No, I agree with you. Let's get to the season, the upcoming season. It's going to be a weird season, and with Clay going down, and there's a lot of weird stuff happening. Being a longtime Warriors fan, I'm sure there's a lot of folks out there that can probably relate. It's like if everything goes bad, you've seen worse. It's like you're prepped for it. You know what I mean?
I don't know if other lifelong fans have had this experience, but I felt like I made a deal with the devil in 2014, and that everything after the first championship, the first championship in this era, was icing on the cake. And so, I obviously feel really sad when things happen, but then eventually the perspective really hits me, and I just say, "This is really great." Part of the problem with all of the sort of quote unquote bad times in the last 6 years has been sort of very immediate and just timely and just happens. And we just know things are going to be back the way they are, but just bounce back because the infrastructure is there. Like back during We Believe, things were going great. And after losing to Utah, there was no infrastructure there. Like Chris Cohen was still the owner, it's sort of like, we don't have this we just immediately were hit with dread and just say, this might set us back for a decade, but this is a totally different ownership. This is totally different everything. And so as long as you zoom out and just have some perspective, then it just makes a lot of sense. Like, just remember how bad it was during the Chris Cohen days. I mean, when Joe Lacob came in, I photoshopped a sign. I took the W in logo at the time and just put it upside down and made it look like an M. And I printed out the sign and it said under new management. And I walked around at the game and everyone was taking pictures with me. I was just like, yeah, I walked around when Chris Cohen sold the team, which was one of the happiest days of my life, with a sign that said under new management. So if any of you were there during the game, I was the guy with that sign.
Wait, so was it like a poster board type thing, like the stuff that you make?
Yeah, it cost me like $100 to print out, dude. I photoshopped it and then print out this poster board, and I walked around.
Oh my god, you're one of those guys. I used to watch games, baseball games, because those are the ones where people have signs usually, and also the cameras show them, And I would actually say to some of my friends, I'd be like, who are these people that make signs?
I didn't make many signs. I remember the last game that Chris Mullen played in, which was the last game that Vancouver had a team, was in Oakland, and I had a sign that said "Run C," and he was just on the bench. He never played or anything. He retired that game. But I mean, there weren't enough fans in the stand to really matter. Nobody was shooting a camera up to the upper deck, a sparsely populated upper deck. But yeah, all of that to say is we'll be fine, everybody. It sounds like we're just gonna buy a bunch of first round picks. If they were able to sell first round picks, Joe Lake will be like, how much? Let's do this.
Yeah, I mean, I think Lacob is he's a great owner in the sense that he wants to win and he's pushing it. I think he's biding his time. He sees like the light at the end of the tunnel when the pandemic and the restrictions will ease up and eventually end, and he'll be able to start just printing money out of Chase Center. It's funny because like maybe the late 90s, early 2000s, I was just, when Cohan still owned the team, I was like, please, somebody buy the team. Can't one of these tech CEOs buy the team? I would say if Jerry Yang, back then the CEO of Yahoo, I think maybe one of the founders, I was like, oh, that guy needs to buy the team. You know what I mean? And, some venture capitalist guy, tech guy, I guess, bought it instead. But that's all I ever wanted. Somebody with like money to buy the team and do something with it. But it's crazy because like, at least for me, growing up in the days when the Warriors really stunk and everything that could go wrong went wrong, there is this sense of not doom. That's too dramatic, and that's not really what I think. But like, there's like, it's coming back. Like you said, we sold our souls, and we're the devil's cashing in on it now.
For me, I like the possibility of overperforming and getting into the playoffs and winning a championship rather than having this expectation of already being handed the championship and it's yours to lose. Like, I feel that's much more of a sense of dread. That feels more like a sense of dread to me than coming in with like a stacked team. DeMarcus Cousins is like, is our seventh man or whatever, versus coming in and you're just like, oh, we're depending on Andrew Wiggins and Kelly Oubre to lead this team. What if I think they're going to overperform. That's just my thought. Bringing in clay, as in like CLAY, clay, that the coaches can mold and make better, versus coming in with a stacked roster and just being handed the championship in the beginning. Like, I think that's a totally different feeling that I prefer. So,
I mean, it goes back to what I said before. You want hope, I think, as a sports fan, and this team has that opportunity to overperform. They're not going to be garbage. It's not like, like you referenced the We Believe team, and then all of a sudden, like, what's his name, Cohan and what was his name? Bobby Roll. Who was their finance guy? Roll. They just started getting rid of everybody, right? Because they were concerned about the bottom line the whole time. And I think this team, they they're going to be fun. I mean, that's obvious. And I think we could be seeing, hey, people talk about the end of the Dynasty. I mean, I don't really care. That's not what it is to me at this point. Like, there's been different stages of this quote unquote dynasty this whole time. And now it's like, okay, we got a different team. This could be the end of the dynasty, and they could be, like a bottom half of the Western Conference playoffs for a while, or this could be just, a 15-year, 20-year thing, and it's a reload, it's a lull. If hypothetical, right? If you want to be optimistic, is like Wiseman shows out, he's awesome. The Wolves end up not super terrible, but terrible enough not to make the playoffs. The balls bounce the right way, and we end up with a pick from 4 to 8, right? And then we take one of these wings, and there will be somebody there. So that would be amazing. And then you end up with, all of a sudden, you have a really young team, with some guys who can show the way.
My thing about this, the whole dynasty conversation is, great, this dynasty, whether or not it's gonna last, whatever. The thing is, this team is now a dynastic team. Like, we've been the fifth largest market in the country forever. We just didn't have a team that fit it. So now we're in the same league as New York, LA, Chicago. And we're not going to suddenly be a Milwaukee or Orlando. Like, every year I like to look at the ESPN's attendance ranking to see which of the bottom 5 teams have the lowest attendance, because I know those teams are going to change ownership, and I know that they're going to be sold and move. It's so fun to watch, but this team is here to stay, and it's going to be a dynastic team. There's going to be ebbs and flows, but there's going to be another Andre Iguodala that wants to come here, and there's going to be, I mean, as long as Salesforce Tower is going to be there, and we're this is this tech center of the world, which is probably going to happen for a while. There's going to be players that want to play here, and so we're not going to suddenly become Utah anytime soon. No offense to Utah, but I mean, nobody's like volunteering to play basketball in Salt Lake City.
Yeah,
So
I think all those years that the Warriors were terrible, everyone knew like that this was a great market. I mean,
players were saying it.
look at the Niners for so many years, like it's just a great sports market in general. So now that it's been tapped, and now that you have an owner who will spend, then there's always going to be a draw. You're right. I mean, they're going to continue to be good as long as they have a good front office.
It's the right mix of ownership, right? You have some owners that want to spend a lot of money now and trade a lot of capital, and like a what's his name, Clippers, Ballmer. Yeah, I mean, he wants to see something immediately, right? So he's gonna mortgage his future to do it. And then you have Houston, Fertitta, I can never pronounce his name, who doesn't have enough money to really spend, and so he's never going into the salary cap. Or you have an owner that is in a market that's so huge that win or lose, you're gonna make money. So why bother spending X amount of dollars if you're just gonna make enough money regardless? And so we're in a perfect mix of like people who care about basketball but don't care too much that they're going to mortgage the future, but will be willing to spend. Like, I can't think of a better ownership group than this.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, it's not Jerry Yang, it's better.
So I really do think that this year they're going to bring back the bubble for the playoffs, because it just makes more sense. Like, it's going to be the great equalizer. Once you get back into it's the difference between like getting a 6 seed and 7 seed and all that, that's all going to play out. Like, we know which teams are generally going to get into the playoffs, but they can't handle actual breakout of a whole team when it comes to the
Right.
playoffs. Like, that's going to be a big deal. So I think we're going to go back to a bubble playoff, which, I mean, as a fan, I liked. I mean, you barely notice the difference. It's obviously going to be different when you're there, but playing.
When is the season supposed to end? When are the playoffs supposed to start?
The second half of the season, the schedule doesn't. They're not releasing it on purpose. They're only doing the first
Okay.
half.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, I know everybody's been talking about the Lakers like loading up and being this is the first time ever that a championship team got better after winning the championship. But I really think that LeBron and everybody really benefited from taking a break and then being in the bubble. Like a lot of those players were old. And so they took like 2-3 months off, basically an off season to heal and then come back. And he's going to have to play 72 games straight. Like there's going to be a lot of back to backs. Like they're squeezing everything in and then going straight into the playoffs. And so I'm not sure what's going to happen in that case.
All right. As being a longtime Warriors fan, right? The Warriors stunk for a long time. The Lakers were always really good. And then when the Warriors finally got good, the Lakers really stunk. Yeah. 2 years ago, I would talk about how, wow, this is the first time in my lifetime the Lakers and the Warriors were actually going to be good. But then the Lakers stunk. And then the following year, the Warriors stunk.
I did this research to find out which years both teams had winning records. Guess how many years since 1950 have both the Lakers and the Warriors had winning records? Okay. 17. But most of the time it was in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So the last few times in the modern era were 81, 82, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 91, 92. And then in the 2000s, just 2006 to 7 and 2007 to 8.
So those late 80s and early 90s teams, those were, or those mid 80s to early 90s teams, those were when the Lakers were still like the Showtime Lakers, right? And
yeah, those Showtime Lakers with like the Warriors getting like the 7
right,
8 seed.
Right, exactly. And
yeah.
And that's when like Sleepy Floyd would go for 51, right? I'm a little mixed and torn about them moving to San Francisco. Obviously, I accepted that a long time ago. And if the trade-off is Lacob wants to move them, and he gave us like he paid for this team in terms of the players and the front office, and he made this happen, I'll gladly take the titles and everything. I'm just a little, I get it. I'm just a little. They left. Stop pandering. Like I know it's the Bays team, but you don't need to reinvent the "We Believe" uniform into something that says Oakland. Leave it alone. The town jerseys were cool. I love those. The black, whatever, the slate color, and with the gold trim, those are pretty smooth. But I don't think they need to keep going back to the well, saying, "Hey, like." It's like an ex-girlfriend saying, "Hey, happy birthday. I didn't forget." You know what I'm saying? So just move on. That's kind of how I feel about it. I'm not mad at like Lacob. I'm not mad at seeing the opportunity and taking it. I'm mad that Oakland couldn't get it together to get a stadium built. I don't know the intricacies of what they tried to do. And
I do. I don't know if that's a whole episode. I mean, I'm a city planner by training and I worked in Oakland. So this is a longer story. The short of it is Lacob is not going to make as much money with a brand new arena in Oakland. The thing is the Oakland Coliseum is owned by the county. And so if Rihanna or Beyonce play 5 straight shows there, Lacob gets $0. So there's not going to be a case where they're going to improve that. And they owed money on it too. Like what you should be pissed off about is they left the bill. Like the Oakland Coliseum is not fully paid for. Like I'm still calling it the Oakland Coliseum. The Oakland Coliseum is still not paid for. Oakland Arena is still not paid for. So that's what people should be really pissed about. And they're going to court for that.
And people are pissed. Like, you see it on Twitter whenever there's any kind of mention of Oakland and whatnot. People be like, why don't you just pay the bill? Right? Like when the uniforms came out, not just the court that they released recently, but when the uniforms came out, people were like, pay the bill that you owe, and then we're good.
Can we go back to the logo?
Yeah.
I went to the logo unveiling.
Go ahead.
The original logo unveiling of the We Believe years. So it was held at the Oakland Civic Center Plaza. The last time I checked, it's Kara's Cupcakes now, which was where the Warriors store was in the Civic Center. And they unveiled the colors all at once and everybody in the room was like, "What the fuck? Like, what is up with this orange and blue?" And then right when we were all stunned, fucking thunder jumped out, and they're like, "What the fuck is a thunder?" And everyone's like, this dude dressed all in blue, and it looked like, Cirque du Soleil, and we were all just stunned. Like, we walked away like, "What is going on?" And, I've always loved the original yellow and blue, so it was kind of a mind-blowing experience. I walked away with a ball, but I was just like, "This is so weird." And it was not worth an hour and a half drive from San Jose to watch this. But obviously the context is totally different now. I just went to Target and I bought a cup, and it comes with the old Warriors Thunder logo. I was like, "Why are they still selling this? Like, it's vintage nostalgia now," which is totally weird.
I liked the We Believe uniforms when they came out. I did not like Thunder. I had some friends. They told me they went to a game, and they were just like yelling at Thunder. They're like, "Hey Bolt! Hey Bolt!" They kept calling him Bolt, and then eventually he turned around and he's like, "It's Thunder." I don't know if you remember, because they when they went to San Jose and they remodeled the Coliseum, because I used to go to the games a lot when I was a kid. My pops used to split season tickets with a coworker, and it was all concrete and it felt like a gym, and it was like, really, that's what
Mhm.
I grew up knowing. So that's my nostalgia. And when it came back, it felt like a freaking mall. At that point, my dad had given up his season tickets, and um, I remember getting nosebleed seats because they had reformed the whole interior. And so where our seats used to be didn't exist anymore. They had replaced that area with, like, I think, boxes or something. My friends and I ended up in the nosebleed. We were behind some little kid's birthday party, which is always an experience. And then they had like a blimp, like indoor blimp, and
Yeah,
yeah,
and
and
it
this
launched out
was
shirts.
that era when they started really trying to make it like this family entertainment thing. And
Yeah, it
yeah,
was a good timeout.
exactly.
Remember the
And
Warriors? It's a good
I
timeout.
was like, I hate this shit. I hated it so much.
The best story part about the story that you're reminding me of is when people ask me what Warrior games used to be like, I would say just replace all of the rich white tech guys with Filipino dads. I mean, it was all every single season ticket holder was a Filipino dad.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
from Fremont to San Leandro to Hayward to Daly City, it was all Filipino dads. Like that's all you would see in the lower level. It was awesome. Like that's all I remember seeing when I was a kid.
Yeah. I also remember just because games were never too packed, we in high school, my friends and I, we would just sneak down to like the floor level seats,
Yeah.
and we would make it, maybe about like 5 minutes of game time before eventually they would come up to us and boot us out. But it was always just kind of like one of those stupid things. Once we would get booted out of one area, we would like walk around the court and try to sit on the other side of the court. And then we would just get kicked out of the arena.
I don't even remember winning games or losing games. I just remembered whether or not we got a personal pan pizza for scoring over 120 or not. That was basically
Yeah, that was awesome, man. And those were guaranteed in the Run TMC days. My
it.
God, I ate too much goddamn Pizza Hut.
I think we can't finish this episode without talking about Westbrook versus John Wall. And I know everybody's sort of like, are you just trading like a bag of recyclables for a bag of garbage? Like, what's the difference between these two players? I know that's kind of messed up to say because these are
Now you're
human
talking
beings, and
like a basketball podcaster.
I don't want to commoditize actual human beings, but I mean, I think it's pretty clear what's going on here is Houston traded away all their assets because of the CP3 Westbrook deal, and they needed some assets. They're clearing house. They know that Harden wants to leave too. Um, and John Wall, although he's injured, he comes with a first round pick. So you get an asset plus essentially what they probably think is the same player. And then Washington gets a player who's healthy that they know for sure is healthy. I think it's a pretty obvious trade. And once you're dealing with some crazy ass contracts that are pushing 40 million a year, it just makes sense. So
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense for both sides, right? Like, it's technically, it's a win-win, even though the real win would be not having either of these players and just getting out from under their contracts completely. But you had to move on from Wall in Washington. He wasn't happy with the idea that they were building around Beal. His ego wouldn't, even though it's obvious,
It's very
his
strange.
ego
That's the
wouldn't let that
strangest
happen.
part is like, has he not been watching like his team? Like, has he not been watching his team? And you don't want a player that's going to root against your team, their own team, just to make sure that when they come back, it's still their team. Like, that's crazy.
Maybe he hasn't figured out like who he really is at this point in terms of a basketball player who tore his Achilles and hasn't played in 2 years and wasn't really that great to begin with. Never lived up to the hype. His I didn't realize he was such a poor shooter.
Can we just remind folks that he didn't get injured playing basketball?
Oh yeah, he slipped on his wet floor at home. Was that it?
I mean, I would imagine it's like a palace with marble floors. It's not just like the kitchen in our
Right.
kitchen with wood. That's like, this is like a palatial kitchen with marble from like imported straight from Italy or something. So it's kind of a freak injury, but it's not like he was playing basketball. So it's very weird. I mean, I think it's up there with falling off a moped in Mississippi. Like I think it's
Or
pretty bad.
or slipping and falling and washing your truck.
Oh, who was that?
Jeff Kent.
Oh God, Jeff Kent, Jesus. I still don't understand these contracts. Like when these contracts were signed, it still doesn't make sense to me. Like I wonder if one of these big contracts get, or even the middle ones get signed, do they even talk to people outside the organization?
I don't know.
Like, I mean, I'm thinking about Malik Beasley. Like I think about it every 3 days now. Like how does Malik Beasley get, is it $80 million over 4 years after being charged with pointing a stolen semi-automatic assault rifle at somebody? And then you think he's going to be all better because he signed the contract. And then he ends up cheating on his wife with Pippen's ex-wife. Like this is not somebody stable that you should be building your team around. As a Warriors fan, I'm totally all for it,
Yes.
100%. Like if Malik Beasley has a foundation or something, I would send money to it because I really want a number 4 pick for
Hmm.
next year or a number 1 pick from 2 years
Hmm.
from now. Let's do this. Let's go Malik Beasley. I want to get a Prince edition, city edition of the Minnesota Timberwolves Malik Beasley jersey if I can. But it's crazy. I mean, Westbrook, I mean, have you seen the last year of Westbrook's contract? Do you know if it's 37 million or 45 million? Because
I mean I don't know. Like I
it's
know
up
it's in the
there.
40s, like I just know that his contract is in the 40s each year for a while. I don't know like where it tapers off or how it fluctuates. Um but getting back to Beasley, man, like yeah, I was so stunned that they signed him and I didn't read too much about his legal case. I know the details you mentioned. I didn't realize it was a rifle. I thought it was like a Glock or something. But either way,
I could be wrong, and I should say
yeah, I mean,
allegedly.
and either way, like it's a bad thing to have surrounding like the chatter on your team. The thing that the Timberwolves lack, it seems like, is any kind of leadership right on the court. And Russell, he seems like he tries to play the part, but I don't know if he actually does it. And Cat doesn't seem to do it. So we'll see if they're just going to be a bunch of guys just getting numbers, and we'll see. Uh, I think Edwards will be good. Hopefully, he doesn't hang out with Malik Beasley and learn how to be a pro from him.
What? Why are you rooting for them? No, I hope they all hang out. I hope he hangs out at his mansion. I hope Anthony Edwards completely adopts
Well, here's the
everything
reason.
and says, here, let me talk to you, Anthony Edwards. If you're listening, I want to, or if you know anybody, if anybody knows him, please send this to him. But like Malik Beasley is a veteran. You're his rookie. And so you need to follow everything he says.
Because I want the draft pick next year. I don't want to. I don't want to wait. So I want them to be bad, but I don't.
Really? You don't want the number 1 pick from 20? You don't want to let it ride?
Uh, yeah, I'll take the number 4 to 6. Next year, as opposed to I don't know who the one is. I know it'll be a better draft than the one we just had, most likely, from what I've heard. But
This totally explains my level of fandom with basketball. But I'm not as devastated of being able to watch a Warriors game in person because I know I can't afford the tickets and I'm probably only going to go to a special bobblehead game. But I was really disappointed not being able to go to the Walnut Creek G League showcase games because I would have gone to all of them. Because it's not that Walnut Creek is still a trek to go to, but like to see the level of basketball at a G League, I mean, it would have been insane in Walnut Creek. Yeah, and now we have to watch it on ESPN The Ocho.
All right, that'll do it for another episode of the Oakland Warriors podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the Oakland Warriors podcast wherever you listen to podcasts and rate us, leave us a comment, say something nice, but more so than anything, come back and listen to the next one. Music in this episode provided by Paper Sun. Special thanks to Paul Amardo for production support. See you next time.